You know, sometimes the best way to really get a handle on our world is to just freeze time and look at a single day in the life of the planet. So let's do that. We're going to press pause on March 20th, 2026, and see what the day's headlines can tell us about where we are and maybe, just maybe, where we're all heading. And it all starts with this number, $108. So what does that mean? Well, it's not just a price, it's more like a global anxiety meter. This is the price for a single barrel of oil, and that figure right there tells a story of an entire world kind of holding its breath, just waiting to see what happens next. And the reason for that price? Well, it's conflict.
Yeah, that's because the biggest story on this day, the one driving that number and shaking up global stability, is an escalating war. A conflict that's pulling in the United States, Israel, and Iran, and its shockwaves are spreading way, way beyond the region. So all this tension is really boiling over in a few key places. The Strait of Hormuz, which is this absolutely critical artery for global energy, is pretty much shut down. There's serious talk of the U.S. seizing Iran's main oil terminal on Karg Island. And then you see the diplomatic fallout. The U.S. Embassy in the UAE suspends its services, telling American citizens to get ready to leave. You put it all together, and it paints a picture of a region completely on a knife's edge.
And right at the heart of this whole crisis, a ton of uncertainty. And it's pretty dangerous. On one hand, you have U.S. President Trump suggesting a possible winding down of American operations. But then, on the very same day, his key ally, Israeli Defense Minister Katz, promises the exact opposite, a significant increase in attacks on Iran. You have to ask, are they even on the same page? That contradiction alone is rattling nerves in capitals all around the world.
While the leaders are all talking strategy, this number brings us right back to the devastating reality on the ground. Over 1,000. Let that sink in for a second. That's the death toll, just in Lebanon, from Israeli attacks tied to this wider conflict. This isn't just about oil routes and geopolitics. This has a profound, tragic human cost.
And for every single life lost, you have to remember that countless more are just completely turned upside down. Over 1 million people have been forced from their homes in Lebanon, and there's this widespread fear that what's happening isn't just a temporary thing, but maybe the start of a long-term occupation of the country's south. This is a humanitarian crisis, and it's just spiraling outwards.
But look, a crisis like this never just stays in one place, right? It always spreads. So let's follow the economic shockwaves and see how this regional conflict is fast becoming a global story.
The World Trade Organization has put out a really stark warning. You can see it here. The numbers show that a long war could shave 0.3% off global GDP growth this year. But for Europe, which is way more dependent on Middle Eastern energy, the hit could be much, much harder, a potential 1% drop in GDP. That is a massive economic blow. And you have to understand, a warning like this isn't just about numbers on a chart. It's a signal that businesses are already hitting pause on investments, that supply chains are fracturing, and that consumers everywhere are probably about to feel the pinch. This is how a regional war starts to look like a global recession.
So what happens? Well, nations are scrambling to adapt to this new reality. You've got Japan, seeing all this instability, pouring $73 billion into U.S. energy. It's actually part of a much larger strategic commitment, a way to hedge its bets. Meanwhile, way over in Denmark, a snap election gets called over security in the Arctic. It just goes to show you, in a world on edge, every nation is suddenly reevaluating its alliances and its weak spots.
But while so much of the world is completely consumed by the crises of today, something totally different is happening. A massive bet is being placed on tomorrow. Right, so this is the other side of the coin for March 20th. It's the counter-narrative. Because even as the old world of energy and conflict seems to be tearing itself apart, these absolutely titanic investments are being made to build a new world, one of technology and intelligence. $500 billion. I mean, that is just a staggering figure, isn't it? It's the amount of money that the investment giant SoftBank just announced it's pouring into a single project in Ohio. So what is it? It's an AI data center. And get this, it's one of the largest single private investments in one place ever. Just think about the contrast for a second. On a day dominated by a war over oil, an absolute fortune is being wagered on the belief that the future isn't about fossil fuels at all. It's about artificial intelligence. Okay, so we've got conflict on one hand, and these huge bets on the future on the other. But that's still not the whole story of a day on planet Earth, is it? Nope. Beyond the big headlines, the rich, messy, sometimes beautiful fabric of human life, it just keeps going. And on this day, there's a moment of, well, shared cultural sadness.
The icon, the legend, Chuck Norris has passed away at the age of 86. I mean, for generations he was just this larger-than-life figure, and his passing really feels like the end of an era.
And, you know, in that classic rhythm of life, an ending is so often followed by a new beginning. The K-pop supergroup BTS, they're back, and their first album in years has already smashed 4 million pre-orders. I mean, that is just a massive wave of pure joy and excitement sweeping across the globe.
And then you get the stories that are, well, they're just a little bit weird. Unique to our times, I guess? President Trump signed an executive order today. Not about the war, but to ensure the Army-Navy college football game gets an exclusive broadcast window in December. A curious little intersection of political power and popular culture.
And amidst all those dire economic warnings we are talking about, here's a story of positive growth. China's reporting a booming flower economy, with spring tourism driving real economic vitality. It just goes to show you that even in really tense times, people still seek out beauty and renewal.
Which brings us to this one final and kind of poignant fact. March 20th, 2026 is the vernal equinox. It's the first day of spring in the Northern Hemisphere. It's a day that's literally hardwired into our planet's cycle of hope and rebirth. And by no small irony, it's also the UN's designated International Day of Happiness. So that's one day, a day of war and displacement and of monumental investment in the future. A day of loss and of record-breaking celebration. A day of darkness set against the promise of spring. And it really leaves us with a question, doesn't it? Faced with all these contradictory realities, in a world of both conflict and creation, what story will we choose to write next? The future isn't set, it's a choice.